Commander Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship that had appeared on his sensors 3 hours ago. The vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, stretching nearly 2 miles long with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water, frozen in space. His exploration ship, the UES Liberty, looked like a tiny metal box next to the graceful alien craft. Jake had been exploring the outer edges of human space for 6 years, but this was the moment everyone had dreamed about and feared in equal measure. The aliens had sent a message in perfect English, which should have been the first warning sign. They called themselves representatives of the Galactic Confederation and claimed they had been watching humanity with great interest. Their leader introduced himself as High Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. The voice that came through, the communication system was smooth and pleasant, almost hypnotic in its calm reassurance. Lisa Carter, the ship's xenobiologist, sat at her workstation studying the first images they had received of the aliens. The Zephyrians looked humanoid, but with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. They wore flowing robes that shimmered with colors that shifted like oil on water. Lisa felt something was wrong, but couldn't put her finger on exactly what bothered her about their appearance. The aliens smiled constantly, but their smiles never seemed to reach their eyes. Captain Ryan Blake stood beside Jake on the bridge, watching as more alien ships began to appear around them. Each vessel was different in design, clearly from various species within this confederation. Blake had spent 20 years in the space fleet and had developed strong instincts about dangerous situations. Something about this encounter felt too easy, too convenient. The aliens had found them at the perfect moment when humanity was expanding beyond their home system, but still vulnerable and eager for contact. High Chancellor Vextar explained that the Galactic Confederation had existed for over 10,000 years and included hundreds of different species from across the galaxy. He painted a picture of peaceful cooperation, shared knowledge, and protection from the dangers that lurked in the dark spaces between stars. The Confederation offered humanity membership in this vast community, promising technological advances that would solve all their problems and allow them to take their place among the stars. Dr. Amanda Foster listened to every word from her position in the science bay. As the ship's leading expert on brain function and neural patterns, she was fascinated by the way the aliens communicated. There was something odd about their speech patterns, a subtle rhythm that seemed designed to be soothing and persuasive. She began recording everything for later analysis, though she wasn't sure why she felt the need to be so careful. The aliens invited representatives from the Liberty to visit their flagship for formal first contact ceremonies. They assured the humans that this was standard procedure for welcoming new species into the Confederation. Jake selected a small team, including Lisa, Amanda, and 3 security officers to accompany him. Blake would remain on the Liberty to maintain communication with Earth and coordinate with the rest of the human fleet that was rushing to their location. The interior of the alien ship was breathtaking. Walls seemed to glow with soft light that came from no visible source. Corridors curved and flowed like they had been grown rather than built. Gardens with impossible plants created pockets of natural beauty throughout the vessel. The air smelled of flowers that didn't exist on any world humans had discovered. Everything was designed to put visitors at ease and create a sense of wonder and welcome. Vexitar met them in a vast chamber filled with representatives from dozens of different species. Each alien race looked content and peaceful, greeting the humans with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. They shared stories of their own first contact with the Confederation and how membership had transformed their civilizations. The testimonials all followed similar patterns, describing lives of harmony, purpose, and fulfillment under Confederation guidance. During the tour, Amanda noticed something troubling. The alien representatives all seemed to speak and move with similar patterns, as if they were following some invisible script. Their personalities felt muted like copies of the same basic template with only surface differences. When she tried to ask detailed questions about their homeworlds or personal histories, their answers were vague and rehearsed. She began to suspect that something was suppressing their individual thoughts and memories. The Confederation's offer to humanity was generous beyond belief. They would share advanced technology that could solve energy problems, cure diseases, and allow faster-than-light travel to anywhere in the galaxy. In return, humanity would need to follow standard integration protocols that all new member species underwent. The process involved installing neural implants that would allow direct communication with other Confederation members and help humans adapt to galactic society. Bextar explained that the implants were necessary because different species had evolved vastly different ways of thinking and communicating. The neural devices created a common foundation that allowed peaceful cooperation between races that might otherwise be unable to understand each other. Every member species had undergone the same process, and it had brought nothing but benefits to their civilizations. Lisa studied the technical specifications they provided and found them impressive, but incomplete. Key details about how the implants actually worked were missing from the documentation. When she asked for more information, the aliens assured her that Earth scientists would receive complete technical data once humanity agreed to join the Confederation. They claimed it was standard security procedure to protect advanced technology from potential misuse. Jake found himself strongly tempted by the offer. Humanity had struggled with resource shortages, conflicts between nations, and the enormous challenges of expanding into space. The Confederation promised solutions to all these problems and more. The alien representatives seemed genuinely caring and concerned for human welfare. Their vast ships and advanced technology suggested they had the power to make good on their promises. As the meeting concluded, Bextar presented humanity with a timeline for integration. They requested that Earth's governments consider the offer carefully and provide an answer within 6 months. During that time, Confederation ships would establish cultural centers on major human worlds to help prepare for the transition. The aliens assured them this was standard procedure and showed holographic records of similar preparations for other species throughout galactic history. The humans returned to their ship with heads full of possibilities and hearts full of hope. Blake immediately began transmitting detailed reports back to Earth while Jake coordinated with the approaching human fleet. The discovery would change everything for humanity, but none of them yet realized just how much danger they were actually facing. The galaxy's most successful predators had found their next prey, and the trap was already beginning to close around the entire human species. 6 months had passed since first contact, and the galaxy looked very different from Ben Rodriguez's office window on New Austin Colony. The Confederation's massive cultural center dominated the horizon, its flowing architecture seeming to pulse with gentle light even during the day. Hundreds of colonists moved in and out of the building daily, most of them sporting the small silver neural implants behind their ears that marked them as integrated members of galactic society. Ben had refused the implant despite pressure from both the colonial government and his own family. As colony administrator, he felt responsible for watching how the integration process affected his people. What he saw growing more disturbing each day. The implanted colonists had become different, somehow more compliant and less creative than before. They still performed their jobs efficiently, but they no longer complained about working conditions or suggested improvements to colonial procedures. The changes had started subtle. Maria Santos, who had run the colony's most popular restaurant, stopped experimenting with new recipes after getting her implant. She now served only the standard meal plans recommended by Confederation nutritionists. Her food was perfectly adequate, but had lost the creative flair that made her establishment special. When Ben asked her about it, she smiled peacefully and explained that the approved meals were scientifically optimized for human health, and there was no need to deviate from perfection. Mining supervisor Carl Lewis had undergone an even more dramatic transformation. Before his implant, Carl had been known for his innovative solutions to equipment problems and his fierce advocacy for worker safety. Now he followed Confederation mining protocols exactly, never questioning procedures even when they seemed inefficient. His accident reports had stopped completely, not because conditions were safer, but because he no longer seemed to notice potential hazards that didn't appear in the official safety manuals. The most troubling change was in the colony's children. Those who had received implants as part of the youth integration program had lost their natural curiosity and playfulness. They attended their educational sessions without question, absorbed their lessons perfectly, and showed no interest in games or activities that weren't part of the approved curriculum. Their parents, also implanted, saw this as a positive development and praised the Confederation's educational methods. Ben tried to discuss his concerns with Governor Patricia Wells on the neighboring colony of New Denver, but communication had become increasingly unreliable over the past month. Messages took longer to transmit, often arrived garbled, and sometimes disappeared entirely. The Confederation technicians assured him they were working to resolve the temporary technical difficulties caused by solar storm activity in the region. Colonel Kate Sullivan arrived at New Austin 3 weeks into the communication blackout, leading a small reconnaissance team from Earth's military. She brought disturbing reports from other human settlements throughout the frontier. 7 colonies had gone completely silent, their automated distress beacons the only sign they still existed. 2 more had reported unusual behavioral changes in their populations before losing contact entirely. Kate's team had visited one of the silent colonies, New Birmingham, and found a functioning settlement with no signs of violence or disaster. The colonists were alive and apparently healthy, working efficiently in expanded mining operations under Confederation supervision. However, when Kate's people tried to speak with the settlers, they received only polite but empty responses about how grateful they were for the guidance of their galactic benefactors. The reconnaissance revealed that New Birmingham was shipping massive quantities of rare metals to Confederation vessels that arrived regularly to collect the materials. The colonists worked longer hours than before their integration, took fewer breaks, and showed no signs of dissatisfaction with their circumstances. They seemed content with their transformed lives, but their contentment felt artificial and disturbing to outside observers. Dr. Amanda Foster had sent encrypted data to Earth through Kate's secure communication channels. Her analysis of the neural implants revealed disturbing patterns in brain activity among the integrated humans. The devices appeared to be suppressing activity in areas associated with creative thinking, emotional response, and individual initiative. The implants didn't control thoughts directly, but they dampened the neural pathways that made humans unpredictable and independent. Tony Mitchell received Amanda's data in his hidden laboratory beneath Chicago. As one of Earth's leading neural engineers, he understood immediately what the aliens were doing to humanity. The implants were designed to make humans more like the other species in the Confederation, docile and manageable creatures who would follow instructions without question. The technology was sophisticated beyond anything humans could currently create, but the purpose was unmistakably sinister. Tony shared his findings with the growing network of scientists, military officers, and government officials who had formed an underground resistance movement. They called themselves the Free Thought Coalition and operated in secret cells to avoid detection by Confederation monitoring systems that had been installed throughout human space. The aliens claimed the monitoring was for communication and safety purposes, but the resistance suspected it was really surveillance designed to identify potential troublemakers. General Patricia Wells coordinated resistance activities from a hidden base in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. She had gathered evidence from multiple sources proving that the Confederation's integration process was actually a conquest strategy they had used successfully on hundreds of other species throughout galactic history. The aliens were patient predators who preferred to subdue their prey psychologically, rather than destroy them through warfare. The resistance discovered that humanity had been targeted because their expanding civilization threatened to eventually reach territory claimed by the Confederation. Rather than fight a war against an unpredictable species, the aliens had chosen to integrate humans into their existing power structure. The neural implants would eliminate the chaotic creativity and stubborn independence that made humans potentially dangerous, transforming them into useful workers and loyal subjects. Intelligence gathered from captured Confederation data cores revealed the full scope of the operation. Phase 1 involved voluntary integration of frontier colonies and Earth's most eager volunteers. Phase 2 would introduce mandatory implantation on all major human worlds under the guise of public health requirements. Phase 3 called for complete neural reconditioning of the entire human species within a single generation. The timeline was accelerating faster than anyone had anticipated. Confederation ships were moving into position around Earth and the major colony worlds. Their cultural centers had been simultaneously monitoring human populations and preparing the infrastructure needed for mass implantation procedures. The aliens had been planning this operation for years, studying human society and psychology to design the perfect trap. Ben Rodriguez received his final communication from Earth, just as Confederation security forces began arresting resistance members on New Austin. The message was brief and encrypted, warning him that mandatory implantation would begin within days. He had perhaps hours to decide whether to submit to integration or join the growing rebellion against humanity's would-be masters. Outside his window, the Confederation Cultural Center pulsed with increasing activity as additional alien ships arrived in orbit. The trap that had been carefully constructed over 6 months was finally snapping shut around the human species. But the aliens had made a crucial mistake in their planning. They had studied human history and psychology, but they had never encountered a species quite like humanity when it was truly threatened with extinction. The resistance networks that had formed across human space were unlike anything the Confederation had seen in their 10,000 years of conquest. Instead of collapsing under pressure, human opposition was growing stronger and more organized. The very traits that the neural implants were designed to suppress, creativity and stubborn independence, were driving the formation of a rebellion that would soon challenge the established order of the entire galaxy. Dr. Chris Parker stared at the alien neural implant under his electron microscope, trying to understand how something so small could control an entire species. The device was no larger than a grain of rice, but its internal structure was more complex than anything human technology could produce. Crystalline circuits wove through biological components in patterns that seemed to shift and adapt as he observed them. After 3 weeks of intensive study, he was beginning to understand why the Confederation had been so successful at conquering other species. The Resistance had managed to capture several intact implants from volunteers who had undergone emergency removal procedures. The operations were dangerous and couldn't always save the subjects, but they provided crucial data about how the alien technology worked. Chris discovered that the implants interfaced directly with specific brain regions, creating artificial neural pathways that gradually rewrote fundamental aspects of personality and decision-making processes. What fascinated Chris most was how differently the implants affected humans compared to other species. Analysis of alien test subjects showed that their neural patterns became almost identical after implantation, following predictable templates that made them easy to control. Human subjects retained much more individual variation, as if something in human brain structure resisted the standardization process that worked so effectively on other species. General Patricia Wells reviewed Chris's reports from her command center hidden deep within the lunar surface. The underground facility had been excavated in secret over the past month using mining equipment diverted from legitimate operations. Hundreds of resistance fighters worked around the clock to prepare for the war they knew was coming. Patricia had spent 30 years in the military, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for fighting an enemy that controlled the minds of their own people. The Resistance faced a horrible dilemma. Millions of humans now carried Confederation implants, including many of their own family members and friends. These people weren't enemies in any traditional sense, but they would fight against human freedom with the same determination they had once shown for human independence. Patricia knew that winning this war would require treating implanted humans as enemy combatants, while somehow finding ways to save them from their alien controllers. Alex Turner led the first successful rescue mission to liberate New Birmingham colony. His team of former Special Forces operators had spent weeks developing electromagnetic pulse weapons that could temporarily disable the neural implants without permanently damaging the subjects. The EMP devices were crude and dangerous, but they represented the only hope of freeing the controlled colonists without killing them. The assault on New Birmingham revealed both the possibilities and the limitations of the Resistance's capabilities. When Alex's team activated their EMP weapons, the implanted colonists suddenly stopped their robotic behavior and looked around in confusion. For brief moments, they remembered who they had been before integration. Some cried, others expressed anger at what had been done to them, but within minutes the implants rebooted and restored alien control over their minds. The temporary liberation provided crucial intelligence about the Confederation's operations. During their moments of freedom, The colonists revealed that the aliens were strip-mining human worlds far more aggressively than anyone had realized. Entire ecosystems were being destroyed to extract rare materials needed for expanding Confederation fleets. The cultural centers were actually command posts coordinating the systematic exploitation of human territory and resources. Captain Susan Davis commanded the stealth ship UES Defiance on increasingly dangerous reconnaissance missions behind Confederation lines. Her vessel had been modified with experimental cloaking technology that could hide it from most alien sensors, but each mission risked exposure and capture. Susan's intelligence gathering revealed that the Confederation was preparing for something much larger than simple conquest of human space. The aliens were using humanity as a testing ground for improved integration techniques they planned to deploy against other species throughout the galaxy. Humans had proven more resistant to neural control than previous subjects, forcing the Confederation to develop new methods and technologies. Once they perfected these techniques on humanity, they would use them to conquer civilizations that had previously been too independent and chaotic to integrate successfully. Susan's most dangerous mission took her to a massive Confederation facility, hidden in an asteroid field near the galactic core. The installation was larger than anything humans had ever built, with thousands of ships coming and going constantly. She discovered that the facility was a processing center where captured humans were undergoing intensive neural reconditioning that went far beyond simple implantation. The reconditioning process completely erased human personality and replaced it with artificial behavioral patterns designed by Confederation psychologists. The resulting subjects looked human but thought and acted like perfect alien citizens. They retained human physical capabilities and adaptability while gaining absolute loyalty to Confederation authority. The aliens planned to use these reconditioned humans as administrators and enforcers for conquering other resistant species. Meanwhile, Tony Mitchell's underground network was developing countermeasures to Confederation surveillance and control systems. Working from hidden laboratories scattered throughout human space, teams of scientists and engineers created jamming devices that could block alien monitoring equipment and communication scramblers that allowed resistance cells to coordinate their activities without detection. The most promising development came from studying captured Confederation computer systems. Tony discovered that the aliens had become over-dependent on artificial intelligence to manage their vast empire. Their AIs were sophisticated, but followed rigid programming patterns that could be exploited by creative human hackers. Unlike the standardized minds of integrated species, human programmers thought in ways that alien systems couldn't predict or counter. Lisa Carter had escaped from the Liberty when it was captured by Confederation forces and now worked with resistance bioweapons researchers. Her xenobiology expertise proved invaluable in developing targeted viruses and toxins that could affect alien physiology while leaving humans unharmed. The work horrified her personally, but she understood that conventional warfare stood no chance against an enemy that controlled most of the human population. The bioweapons project revealed another crucial difference between humans and other species. Previous Confederation subjects had possessed strong ethical prohibitions against developing weapons of mass destruction. Their integrated minds simply couldn't conceive of using such terrible tools even for their own freedom. Humans retained the moral flexibility to use any weapon necessary for survival, making them far more dangerous than the aliens had anticipated. As resistance activities intensified across human space, the Confederation began to realize they had seriously underestimated their latest conquest target. Reports from field commanders described humans using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Resistance fighters employed psychological operations, sabotage, and terrorist attacks that other species would have considered unthinkable. They showed no respect for Confederation authority and no willingness to surrender even when facing impossible odds. The first cracks began appearing in Confederation control when other subject species witnessed human resistance activities. For thousands of years, integrated species had accepted their subjugation as natural and inevitable. The sight of humans fighting desperately for freedom awakened memories and desires that neural implants had suppressed but not completely erased. Scattered uprisings began occurring on worlds throughout Confederation space, as other species began to question their masters for the first time in millennia. High Chancellor Vextar convened emergency sessions of the Confederation leadership to address what they now recognized as an existential threat to their empire. The human problem was no longer about integrating another species. It had become about preventing the collapse of their entire galactic civilization. For the first time in their 10,000-year history, the Confederation faced the possibility of total defeat at the hands of a species they had initially dismissed as primitive and easily controlled. Lieutenant Commander Paul Evans watched his computer screens as the virus he had created spread through Confederation networks like wildfire. The artificial intelligence program was designed to look harmless, disguising itself as routine maintenance software while secretly gathering intelligence and sabotaging critical systems. Within hours of its release, Confederation fleets across 3 star systems had lost primary navigation, weapons control, and communication capabilities. The virus represented a new form of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. Previous conflicts between the Confederation and resistant species had followed predictable patterns of fleet battles and planetary sieges. Humans had thrown out the traditional rules of engagement and turned the aliens' own technology against them. Paul's team of hackers operated from mobile command centers that jumped between asteroid fields and dead space, staying ahead of Confederation hunter-killer squadrons that couldn't match human unpredictability. Dr. Helen Brooks completed her final tests on the biological weapons that would change the course of the war. Working in a laboratory hidden beneath the polar ice caps of Europa, she had developed targeted pathogens that could affect specific alien species while remaining harmless to humans and other resistant populations. The weapons violated every treaty and moral principle that governed civilized warfare, but Helen understood that civilization itself was at stake. The bioweapons were designed to cause temporary paralysis rather than death, reflecting humanity's hope that controlled alien populations could eventually be freed and return to normal lives. However, the psychological impact on Confederation forces was devastating. For the first time in their history, the aliens faced an enemy willing to use weapons that their integrated minds couldn't even conceive of developing. The knowledge that humans possessed such capabilities spread panic through alien command structures. Pilot Maya Jackson led her squadron through the twisted wreckage of what had once been the Confederation's largest fleet base. Human fighters had destroyed the facility using tactics that defied every principle of space combat doctrine. Instead of engaging in honorable fleet battles, they had used cloaked ships to plant nuclear mines throughout the base before attacking with coordinated swarms that struck from every direction simultaneously. Maya's pilots flew in patterns that seemed random and chaotic, but were actually based on complex mathematical algorithms that human brains could process intuitively. Alien tactical computers, designed to predict logical battle strategies, couldn't keep up with the creative improvisation that made human combat units so effective. Each engagement taught the resistance new ways to exploit weaknesses in Confederation thinking and technology. The war spread rapidly as news of human resistance activities reached other subject species throughout the galaxy. On the industrial world of Kepler 442, the insectoid hive workers began sabotaging production facilities after witnessing human propaganda broadcasts that somehow penetrated Confederation jamming systems. Their neural implants prevented direct rebellion, but they found ways to reduce efficiency and cause equipment failures that supported the human cause. The aquatic depth swimmers of Proxima Centauri went further, actively attacking Confederation underwater facilities after human agents provided them with weapons designed specifically for their physiology. The aliens discovered that their control systems worked differently on various species, and some were more susceptible to awakening than others. Each successful liberation created new allies and sources of intelligence for the growing rebellion. Engineer Rick Stone coordinated the quantum communication network that allowed human forces to maintain contact across vast distances despite Confederation jamming efforts. The technology was based on theoretical principles that human scientists had developed independently, using approaches that alien researchers had never explored. The communications were impossible to intercept or decode because they operated on quantum principles that the Confederation didn't fully understand. The quantum network revealed the true scope of the rebellion's growth. Resistance movements had emerged on over 200 worlds throughout Confederation space. Some were led by humans who had escaped integration, others by alien species who had broken free from neural control, and many by mixed groups working together against their former masters. The Confederation was fighting simultaneous wars on dozens of fronts with enemies who shared intelligence and coordinated strategy in real time. Captain Nathan Brooks commanded the human fleet that emerged from hiding in the galactic rim to begin the final phase of the war. His ships were built using captured Confederation technology, combined with human engineering innovations that prioritized speed, stealth, and devastating firepower over the elegant efficiency preferred by alien designers. The fleet looked rough and improvised compared to Confederation vessels, but its capabilities far exceeded anything the aliens could field. The decisive battle began when Nathan's forces attacked the Confederation capital system using a strategy that alien military theorists had dismissed as impossible. Instead of engaging the defensive fleets in traditional combat, human ships bypassed them entirely and struck directly at civilian infrastructure and government facilities. The attack violated every rule of civilized warfare, but achieved complete, strategic surprise against enemies who couldn't imagine such barbaric tactics. Confederation leaders found themselves trapped in their command bunkers as human assault teams fought through the capital city, using weapons and techniques that seemed to come from a primitive and violent past. The aliens had spent millennia eliminating such capabilities from their subject species, but humans had retained and refined their capacity for direct, brutal conflict. The sight of human soldiers advancing through the elegant spires of the galactic capital sent shockwaves throughout Confederation space. High Chancellor Vexitar made his final transmission from the ruins of the Confederation Council chamber as human forces breached the building's defenses. His message was broadcast throughout the galaxy, formally surrendering to human authority and ordering all Confederation forces to cease resistance. The surrender came not from military defeat alone, but from the recognition that continued fighting would only accelerate the collapse of galactic civilization. The aftermath of victory revealed the true extent of the Confederation's crimes against sentient life. Archives captured from government facilities contained records of thousands of species that had been integrated over the millennia, their cultures and identities systematically erased in the pursuit of galactic order. The documentation provided evidence of genocide on a scale that dwarfed any atrocity in human history. Admiral Steve Johnson faced the overwhelming task of managing victory over an empire that spanned half the galaxy. Billions of integrated beings across thousands of worlds looked to humanity for leadership, having lost the capacity for independent governance after generations of neural control. Many begged humans to become their new masters, unable to comprehend the concept of freedom after so long under alien domination. The liberated species presented complex challenges that military victory alone couldn't solve. Some had been integrated, so long that removing their neural implants would leave them unable to function in any organized society. Others had developed hybrid cultures that combined their original traditions with Confederation influences in ways that couldn't be easily separated. Each world required individual solutions based on its specific circumstances and the degree of integration its population had undergone. Dr. Carol Martinez led humanitarian teams throughout former Confederation space, working to reverse the neural conditioning that had enslaved billions of sentient beings. The process was slow and often incomplete, but every successful restoration proved that the damage could be undone with patience and proper treatment. Her work became the foundation for a new galactic civilization based on freedom rather than control. The war had ended with humanity's complete victory over the Confederation, but the real challenge was just beginning. Humans had proven they couldn't be controlled or cataloged like other species, but now they faced the responsibility of helping an entire galaxy learn to be free again. The chaotic creativity that had made them so dangerous to their enemies would now be tested in the even more difficult task of building something better from the ruins of the old order. Captain Nathan Brooks stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching as construction crews worked to rebuild the Confederation capital into something entirely new. The elegant spires that had once symbolized alien authority were being replaced with structures that reflected the diverse architectural styles of dozens of liberated species. Human engineers worked alongside former Confederation subjects to create a city that celebrated freedom rather than uniformity, though the process was often complicated by the different ways various species approached design and construction. The transition from conquest to governance had proven more challenging than the war itself. Dr. Carol Martinez reported from her medical facilities that reversing neural conditioning was possible for most species, but the process could take years and didn't always restore pre-integration personalities completely. Some individuals emerged from treatment as entirely new people, neither their original selves nor their controlled versions, but something unique created by the interaction between natural development and artificial modification. The former Confederation archives revealed the staggering scope of what had been lost over 10 millennia of systematic cultural erasure. Entire languages had been forgotten, artistic traditions abandoned, and scientific approaches suppressed in favor of standardized methods approved by alien authorities. Recovery efforts led by human archaeologists and xenocultural specialists were working to reconstruct lost knowledge, but much had been deliberately destroyed and could never be recovered. Admiral Steve Johnson faced daily requests from liberated species asking humans to assume permanent control over their worlds and governments. The Zephyrians, who had served as the Confederation's primary administrators, were particularly insistent that humans should take their place as galactic leaders. Their neural conditioning had left them unable to make independent decisions about complex governance issues, and they genuinely believed that accepting human authority was their only path to survival and prosperity. Steve's response established the principles that would guide humanity's approach to galactic reconstruction. The Free Species Alliance was founded on the concept that every sentient being had the right to determine their own fate, regardless of their current capacity for self-governance. Humans would provide assistance, protection, and guidance, but they would not become the new masters of species they had fought to liberate. The Alliance Charter specifically prohibited any member species from exercising permanent authority over others. The Charter faced its first major test when the hive workers of Kepler 442 requested human intervention to prevent civil war between different worker castes. Their neural implants had suppressed the natural conflicts that arose from their complex social hierarchy, and removal of alien control had unleashed centuries of accumulated resentments. The situation required delicate negotiation to help them develop new social structures that balanced their biological instincts with the need for peaceful cooperation. Engineer Tony Mitchell led the massive technological rehabilitation project that was transforming infrastructure throughout former Confederation space. Human teams worked with liberated species to replace alien control systems with technologies that enhanced, rather than suppressed, natural capabilities. The project required developing entirely new approaches to interspecies cooperation, since different species had vastly different relationships with technology based on their evolutionary backgrounds. The most successful reconstruction efforts occurred on worlds where humans worked as partners rather than leaders in the recovery process. The aquatic depth swimmers proved particularly adaptable, combining their natural problem-solving abilities with human engineering techniques to create underwater cities that surpassed anything either species could have built alone. Their success became a model for cooperation between species with completely different environmental requirements and cultural approaches. Maya Jackson had transitioned from fighter pilot to diplomatic courier, carrying messages between human administrators and alien leaders throughout the galaxy. Her travels revealed the incredible diversity of approaches different species were taking to rebuild their civilizations. Some attempted to recreate pre-integration societies exactly as they had been, while others embraced completely new cultural forms that incorporated lessons learned during their time under alien control. The most dramatic changes occurred among species that had been integrated so long that their original cultures were almost entirely lost. The Silicon Weavers had served as the Confederation's primary computer specialist for over 5,000 years, and they had no clear memory of what their society had been like before integration. With human assistance, they were essentially creating a new civilization from scratch, combining fragments of recovered history with entirely new traditions suited to their current circumstances. Dr. Helen Brooks faced the difficult task of destroying the biological weapons she had created. During the war, the pathogens had been crucial to human victory, but they represented a terrible threat to galactic security if they ever fell into the wrong hands. Her destruction protocols were observed by representatives from every major species in the Alliance, demonstrating humanity's commitment to never again allowing such weapons to threaten galactic peace. The weapons destruction ceremony had profound symbolic importance for many liberated species. For thousands of years, they had lived under the threat of Confederation military superiority, knowing that resistance meant certain death. Watching humans voluntarily destroy their most powerful weapons sent a clear message that the new galactic order would be based on cooperation rather than fear. The gesture helped convince many skeptical species that human intentions were genuinely peaceful. Rick Stone's quantum communication network had evolved into the backbone of the Free Species Alliance, allowing instantaneous coordination between thousands of worlds despite the vast distances involved. The network operated on principles of voluntary participation and shared governance, with each member species contributing resources and expertise while maintaining complete autonomy over their internal affairs. The system worked because it was designed to enhance rather than replace local decision-making processes. The Alliance faced its greatest challenge when the apex predators of the Galactic Core requested membership, despite their history of aggressive expansion before Confederation. Integration. Their species had been warrior poets who celebrated combat and conquest, traits that neural conditioning had suppressed but not eliminated. Human negotiators worked with them to develop cultural practices that channeled their competitive instincts into peaceful activities like artistic creation and athletic competition. The apex predator integration process established important precedents for dealing with species whose natural behaviors might threaten galactic peace. Rather than attempting to suppress or control potentially dangerous traits, the Alliance focused on providing alternative outlets and support systems that allowed each species to express their nature without harming others. The approach required constant negotiation and adjustment, but it avoided the oppressive uniformity that had characterized Confederation rule. 5 years after the war's end, the first interspecies children were born on Alliance worlds. Human parents worked with alien partners to raise offspring that belonged fully to neither species, but represented something entirely new in galactic history. These children grew up speaking multiple languages, understanding different cultural perspectives, and thinking in ways that neither purely human nor purely alien minds could achieve. The interspecies families became powerful symbols of what the Alliance represented. Unlike the artificial unity imposed by Confederation neural control, they demonstrated that different species could choose to work together while maintaining their individual identities. The children served as natural ambassadors between species, helping to bridge cultural gaps that had seemed impossible to cross. Captain Susan Davis commanded the exploration fleets that pushed beyond the boundaries of former Confederation space, making contact with species that had remained hidden during the alien empire's reign. Many of these civilizations had developed advanced technologies and sophisticated cultures while avoiding Confederation attention through isolation and careful concealment. Their integration into the Alliance brought new perspectives and capabilities that enriched the growing galactic community. The exploration program revealed that the galaxy contained far more intelligent life than the Confederation had ever discovered. Hundreds of species had chosen to remain hidden rather than risk integration, developing remarkable innovations in stealth technology and cultural preservation. Their freedom to rejoin galactic civilization represented one of the Alliance's greatest achievements, proving that diversity and independence could coexist with peaceful cooperation. As the Alliance expanded and matured, humans found themselves in the unexpected position of being galactic peacekeepers and mediators. Their reputation for unpredictable creativity made them effective diplomats when dealing with conflicts between species with very different ways of thinking. Human negotiators could understand and communicate with alien perspectives that other species found completely incomprehensible.